as I started saying, is about how you can deploy your application. As Tony mentioned, we have been over this subject before, but it's something that most of us have to do on a regular basis. You write some code, the code does something good, then you need to put the code in clients' machines. In APL64, you have two main distribution options. What we like to call the traditional option when you are creating a traditional Windows application, which is going to get double-clicked by someone and it's going to do some things and then exit. And the other one is what we like to call a cross-platform component. So it's more like an API kind of application when you are just providing functionality that is expected to be used by third-party developers or third-party consumers. It's not expected to have any graphical user interface or anything like that. It's just a completely different deploying mechanism. Again, sometimes I'm going to repeat something that everybody knows. APL64 is built in .NET Core, so we have to abide by the rules of .NET. Trying to go to the next slide, failing miserably. Okay, good. So where can you start? You can go to the Help menu, Developer GUI, and look at the WRE and CPC overview. It will bring a magnificent document that will get you started. I'm not going to go over that document. I think we have a YouTube video somewhere going over that document. So this is just a refresher or where you can find information. Main thing of the Windows Runtime Executable is the workspace is expected to have quad LX, the latent expression assigned, because that is the thing that is going to get called, and that is the thing that is going to allow your applications to stay around in the user desktop. You have the quad LX or a wait loop of any kind, then the only thing that is going to happen is your application will exit. This is the moment when I'm going to start bringing more windows on top of the presentation. Just give me 1 second. I seem to have lost my space. There it is. So basically, you load a workspace. This is one of the examples we have available in the documentation. Let me increase the size, the font a bit. I think it's a little bit more readable now. Bring a workspace is going to have a latent expression defined, which means that a function will get executed when the workspace is loaded. To distribute, then you go to options, create a runtime. And right now we're talking about the WRE, Windows Runtime Executable. I know the screen is a little bit low. That's why I have this presentation in the background, magnifying the options. Gonna go back to the workspace. So basically, when you go to create the Windows Runtime Executable options, bring this into the proper screen. So the options we're talking about is this one here. Single exe file, including all dependencies, folder of files excluding the .NET runtime of a single exe file, excluding the .NET runtime. So what this maximize option here is about. So, try to put the presentation to the next slide. Of course not. The very beginning, the first presentation of this subject, there was only one option, a single file with all dependencies. We kind of started by the end. So we sort of inside of APL64, the development team, we make a decision, what is the easiest thing we can do? And then this one file with everything on it looks like a no-brainer. So basically, you go to the menu, you fill out the fields with the version number, company name, all those application name, all those kind of things. Then you select the one file with everything, and you're done. Now you have one file, approximately 200, 250, 300 megabytes in size, and that's the only thing you need to give your end client user. The end client user will double click that file and your application will run. And it will run as long as the minimum operating system requirement is met, because APL64 is a .NET application that is like a Windows 10 build 1822 or something like that, which is like from 4 years ago. And for everybody who's not up to date, Windows 10 is already out of support officially by Microsoft. So the minimum requirement is long met by every machine on the planet. So you don't have to, your end user doesn't have to worry about anything. But then people said, I don't want to distribute the .NET runtime. I don't want to distribute OS components. The file is just too big. Can you do something else? Then we came to two other options. We said, well, okay, we're going to give you one file, so you can still just double click something and your application will start running, but we are not going, sorry, this, I absolutely hate this. The application will run, but the .NET runtime will not be on it. So the size will be smaller. What happens if your end user doesn't have the .NET runtime? When they double click, they will get a Windows warning saying you're missing a component. And then they have to go and figure out how they install the component they're missing. I mean, with, all the technology advancements and ChatGPT and GitHub Copilot, Google Gemini, you can quickly ask how I get this thing done. And hopefully you will get the answer. So the end user is not going to be in worse times. Now, if your end user is in a corporate environment, then it may be a lot more pain to be able to get them to do something. The machines are going to be locked down, administrator users, and all those things. So then we said, well, maybe we have, as part of our clients, larger businesses that have DevOps on them. So they have people who know how to create deployment packages, either using MSI or MSIX packages. So let's give them everything they need to distribute the application. So that was what that option was about, folded files, excluding the .NET runtime. So this is all the files that someone who knows what he's doing can use to create an MSI or MSIX to distribute your application to end users. And that is sort of the focus of today's updated information. Many options, many options under the sun. So because I want to speak only for around 40 minutes, then I'm going to be focusing on two options. MSIs and MSIX. On the center column, Windows Application Packaging, it refers to the latest technology. Latest technology is like 5 years old, maybe 7 years old, MSIX. So that is, I will be showing how to create an MSIX. The other one is like 20 years old, is the, everybody knows MSI packages and exe packages. It's just installer packages. So it's how can you create an installer package using the files you created on APL64 to distribute your application, or how can you create an MSIX package to distribute your applications? Complexity, the MSI is going to be extremely simple. So basically, it's kind of a wizard. It's GUI based, integrating Visual Studio. You can use Visual Studio Community Edition. You can use Visual Studio Professional. The time is flexibility, not that flexible. You have minimum options, destination, some things you can put in there. Again, depending on how sophisticated you are, if you have a really sophisticated continuous integration, continuous development pipelines, then it's not that simple to automate. And it's best for people who have really simple applications, doesn't change often. It's always the same files. And for people who have not created themselves MSIs before. So that's what Visual Studio Installer projects will be about. The Windows application package, the complexity is high. This is what I love to refer to as a rabbit hole. If you go on the rabbit hole, you may never come back. You can do anything you can imagine. Is incredibly flexible, but you need to pay your dues and you need to learn a little bit, probably a week, probably 2 weeks. Uh, Flexibility out of this world. You can change the UI, you can ask for special permissions, you can execute your application on special containers, you can have automatic updates, uh, you can go crazy. Extremely good for people who have sophisticated systems when everything is deployed automatically. You have some sort of source system, and you check in your code, and then you set it done, and then some magic happens, and then everything is done. But again, it requires you to learn a lot of new tricks. In either of these approaches, test, test, test. You really need to test what you have done. And it's a pain in the butt to test because you're testing installers. So when you're testing installers are making changes to your machine. So testing things like modifying installers, repairing installers, upgrading, downgrading, all those kind of things are a massive pain. The Windows operating system has something called the Windows Sandbox that can be used to help you test installers. I'm not going to go into sandboxes today. If anybody's interested and want to have one of these presentations about Windows sandboxes and test installers, contact support at apl2000.com and we will schedule it. In addition to the things that we'll present today, there is hundreds of commercial solutions out there that charge everything from a few £100 to thousands of pounds a year. Again, everything under the sun. So I'm going to give you a couple of things that using the Visual Studio Community Edition you can risk it trying to use Visual Studio Code and some plugins, but at the end of the day, you can kind of do by free. It's just downloading some SDKs, downloading some templates, so you're not going to require. And again, Community Edition, Visual Studio Community Edition is free. Again, if you are in a corporate environment, then you may not get away with those things. Smaller shops, then it's going to be easier. So okay, I'm gonna go back one thing. One moment, one second. I'm gonna go back one slide before going to this steep end. Good. So this, from now on, I'm going to assume, I'm not going to assume, this is going to start from that you have selected the folder of files, excluding the .NET runtime. This is one of the examples that is included on the APL64 documentation. So you can get it on the links that I presented previously here. You can get it, you can download, you can execute this. So this is going to execute, and what it's going to create, and this, this is what it's going to create then is you're going to go to the executable output, and it's going to create a publish folder with a ton of files on it. So again, you went into APL64, you went into the create a .NET assembly, Windows executable runtime, you went for the folder of files option, and then you have now this thing inside of a folder with all the files on it. For reference, this folder is about 166 megabytes. I know that font is tiny on the screen. I see it really, really tiny on the screen. Maybe it looks better on your screens. 166 megabytes. So good. Good. So we are on the same page. You have just done the creation of the WRE and you have the files. The first one, the Visual Studio Installer project. At the end of the presentation, somewhere this afternoon, I will be giving this to Sonia, so she will distribute this to all the attendees. So don't worry about reading too much. It will be there. This is more of a show and tell. So what the instructions will tell you is to create this thing, my awesome app.setup, using something called, I'm gonna change the size of this so we can look at some of the instructions in the background. Microsoft Visual Studio Installer Projects. This is Visual Studio Community Edition. You get that, you create the project, then you have the thing I have on my right-hand side, which I know is tiny. I don't know if I can zoom. I don't think I can zoom. No, I cannot zoom. Sorry. Good. So you create that project, you install that project, then you select the project, create it. And then basically what you do is right-click, add files, you navigate to the publish folder, you select everything, click OK. Again, the presentation will be distributed at the end. And the things that you need to do are changing these properties here on the right-hand side. So basically, who's the creator of the application, the name of the application, whether you're going to check if there are previous versions of the applications on the target machine, whether you're going to be installed for all users or just the current user, version of the installer. For sanity, most people maintain the version of the installer and the version of the application sync. So they're always the same. They don't have to be. But basically, if this is something that you're going to have to do manually because the version of the application you set up in APL64, then this thing is a complete different file. So you have to go and change it here. The most important change is the target platform. All APL64 applications are 64 bits only. So you need to set the target platform to be x64. That's the only thing you cannot forget to do. Everything else is whatever makes sense, language, company, support URL, support font, what is the subject application, all those kind of things don't make too much sense. This thing has some utilities like the user interface. So the user interface application is going to be a welcome installation folder, confirms the installation, progress and end. There is an administrative install that is kind of the same thing. Then when you click in some of these dialog boxes that you can control certain things, you can add dialogues. And again, then you have dialogues with radio buttons you can show and end users license agreements that need to be checked before you progress. So it has basically, if you remember that comparison is light, then it's not overly sophisticated, but it gives you some basic options. And again, you can collect information and then use that information on your setup. Once you're happy with everything, then the only thing you do is build or rebuild. And when you build, then the output will be, and I know I'm going to the source, the output will be an installer file, which is about 50 megabytes in size. It also contains this setup.exe, and this is just basic information. The setup contains what is called the bootstrapper. So if you define any sort of conditions that need to be met for the application to be installed, then the user should double-click the setup. The installer itself is assuming that you met all requirements for the application to be installed. So again, depending on your particular needs, If you need the specific operating system components or whatever it is, then again, you can do some of those things on Visual Studio here using the interface and the prerequisites and why not. But the installer is going to be like that because this installer is expecting that you have the standard components Windows version 5 upgraded. There is command lines so you can execute the installer with logging, so you can gather logs in case the installer fails and the end user cannot get the application. You're going to need the installer logs to see what happened. But at the end of the day, it should be just double click. I could risk my life and double click to see what happened. And then when you double click, then you get the usual Windows installer UI with the the welcome dialog, the select the folder, all those things. It's going to get registered in the programs and features in Windows, and kind of it's that easy. Good. Again, using Visual Studio, I'm using Visual Studio Community Edition, which is free. The only thing you need to do is add this extension. It's called Microsoft Visual Studio Installer Projects. Once you install it, then you follow these 3 steps, and then you're mostly done if you don't need to do anything super special. If you need to do something special, then on the Visual Studio project, you have some options. You can add extra GUI elements. You can put your end user license agreement. You can do some things. Some of the properties you have and the options you have is what to do on upgrades. Do you want to remove the previous version? Do you support side-by-side installations? All those kind of things. So some options, not a lot of options, some options. What options you don't have? You want to change that UI? Then this is not the tool for you because there is no way to change any of those dialogues. You have options to include icons and things like that. So, but that's pretty much it. Is a lot more complicated. So MSIs, they were easy. You double click it, they're done. MSIXs, they are really powerful and extremely cool, but they are a lot more complex. So if you use something like the Windows Store or your own web server to distribute it, then you will be something like the end result will be something like this. So this is my machine. So basically, you're going to have your awesome app package. You're going to have the version, then you're going to have a handy click to get the app. Then you have the version information, the minimum OS, the platform, who's creating this, and so forth and so on. Big companies with big security departments absolutely love it because you can block the application installer by application ID. So when your client, your end user, is a big corporate client, then you can just tell them that what your application ID is going to be, and that's the only thing the users are going to be able to install. So they absolutely love it. The other thing they love it is they get, depending on how you set it up, then they get automatic upgrades or they get notifications when there is an upgrade. Because depending on how you're publishing your application, if you're using the Windows Store or your own web server, then you change the application manifest, which changes this version thing, and then the user gets notified that there is a new version. You see it in a ton of apps today, like Edge or Chrome or whatever, that sometimes they give you that, yellow notice, red notice that there is an upgrade and that you should upgrade. So all those things happen because of the packaging technology. A lot more complicated, like a lot. So how this thing is going to get done? Instructions again at the end. Sonia will distribute this, and we will create a YouTube video when you can read this carefully. And why not? I'm just gonna switch to Visual Studio again using the Visual Studio Community Edition because that's also where I am. So the first thing is gonna say is you need to have the .NET Desktop development and the Universal Windows Platform development as part of the options you have in Visual Studio. Once you have those things, then you're going to be able to create this Windows application packaging project. Basically, it's file, new, you put this into a search box, and it will give you that option, and you select that option. And this one I call my awesome app package because it's just absolutely awesome. What you get after you have done all this is this scary looking window with thousands of links on it and whatever. It's like, don't panic. Don't panic about that window. But this is what you're gonna end after you select that. After you select that, this is what is going to happen in Visual Studio. At this moment, already looks too scary. Run away. No need to. Just follow the steps. Next slide. If I can. I definitely not do it with PowerPoint. Good. So next step is add the files that you want to install. Similar to the MSI, is right-click in your package, add existing item, navigate to the publish folder, select everything. Okay, pretty much done. And then you need to make a couple of changes to make sure your application is the one that is being selected. So the first change is you need to open the package application manifest. The manifest, and I know this screen is tiny. I don't know. It's like everybody will be able to see this on the documentation later. The application manifest is the thing that is going to tell everybody what your application does and what it needs to run and what it contains and why not. So the display name is actually what is going to get displayed. In Windows, the entry point is the exe that is going to be running, default language, trust level. So again, ton of options. By default, desktop apps require full trust because just the way we are. But if you are developing like a widget, like a weather widget for Windows or a news widget or, football scores widget, whatever it is, then you may say that you don't need full trust, that you just need to be able to contact a web server to display some information, but you don't need full trust. The default behavior of any APL64 app will always have to be Windows app because of how the WRE works. So you would always have to be Windows app. If you're using something like a cross-platform component and created your own UI using Maui or any of the other examples we have presented to you before, then you can change that to something else. Then it's going to have capabilities, what it does, and then what packaging options you have, which is basically the version. Is what version you're going to be using. MSIXs, unlike MSIs, are newer. So they have embedded requirements. One of the embedded requirements is they have to be digitally signed. They cannot be not signed. There is no option not to sign them. MSIs, you have the option not to sign them, which means that probably no antivirus in the planet will ever let it run. But you have the option not to sign it. MSIXs, you do not have the option not to sign it. The option on the screen right now is gray out. This thing is creating a fake certificate, local certificate, to sign the MSIX, which means that if I give this file to somebody, their antivirus is going to say, I don't trust that certificate. Please do not run this because it may harm your computer. So that is topic for another conversation, is how you get digital signatures. But MSIXs do not let you pretend you don't have to sign installers. You have to. And the thing I'm going to mention is on the presentation, but it's likely that you have to make sure that this was added to this file. This my awesome app package is nothing more than an XML file. In this example we're working today is one of the default examples of WREs, including in the APL64 documentation. On that example, the application we are creating is called MySpaceApp.exe. So we have to make sure that that is the entry point that is being set up. Being an installer, it needs to know what to execute when you double click the thing that you just installed. So that's the only thing we're making sure here is on the presentation. One second, I'm trying to change the slide again. Good. Again, the things I went over these screens already. Figure the package manifest is the thing that tells the world what your application is about. Entry point, visual assets, icons for the taskbar, icons for the start menu, icons for the program menu, icons for everything everywhere. Package name and version, publisher, that should be you, or your company. Capabilities tab is what your application is advertising does. Desktop application is usually just, I'm gonna need you to trust me and run for trust. Again, depending on what kind of application you create, you may want to specify specific capabilities. If your application is using internet access or whatever, you need to advertise those things, because otherwise it may get sandbox and block. MSIX is extremely powerful. Information security guys love them. Once the project has been configured, this is again, the instructions are there. I'm just going to show it like that, not like them, or just clicking around and show you what time will open that. When everything is done, then you can right click, or you can go to one of the menus, and then you're going to select publish. And on the publish, you can, if you're using the Microsoft Store, that you can send it directly to the store. If you're going to have your own web server, or if you want to upload to the store manually, then you can select create the app packages. Then it's going to have a wizard that's going to guide you step by step. Again, you don't have to do the wizard every single time. You can just build and deploy, and it will do it. But the wizard is going to tell you, I want to publish things to the Microsoft Store, or I want things on my hard drive, which is called side loading. Of course, I want things side load. I don't want an account. Skip packaging is not skipping packaging. It's signing the package with a local certificate, meaning no one is going to be able to use it. If I send this package to someone, they will immediately be prompted that the certificate should not be trusted. And if you have a certificate, then it's going to tell you where your certificate comes from. Is from the Microsoft keyballs, or from another store, or from a file, or from a third-party vendor. Then it's going to have the version number, whether you want to automatically increment the versions or not, and the important bit, X64 release. APL64 applications are 64-bit. Always, it doesn't mean that every component of the application has to be 64-bit. When you're using Quad WI inside of APL64 applications, you're running the 32-bit components of APL to do the user interface. But the main executable entry point is always 64 bits only. That's the reason you need to select this. And then, how often the application needs to check for updates. Every time, every day, every hour, every whatever. So again, extremely, extremely powerful tool. The MSIXs are extremely powerful, but it requires you to study carefully what you're clicking around because it may never work if you don't do it right. The installer location is somewhere on my hard drive because I want to just show you guys what I did. And then you click create. I'm going to click create. Then it's going to go into this folder. It's going to create the file that I showed you, this index file. It's going to create the app installer. This is the thing that is going to change every single time you change the version. And this is because the file is tiny. This is the thing that is used to detect updates. So if the app installer changes, then everybody who has this application knows that there is an update, but the file is tiny. So they don't have to download your entire application to realize that it's an update. And then the MSIX bundle will be here, and it's about 27 meg. They are extremely good at compressing data. So we go from massive size if you're using single file, almost massive size if you're using single file. If you just take the files of the directory and copy paste those files into somebody's machine, which will also allow your application to run, we're talking about 160 meg, 166 meg. If you use an MSI, then it's going to be around 50. If you use MSIX, then it's going to be around 27, 28. A lot more options. The updates are unbelievably handy and powerful. You don't have to use them if you don't want to. You can publish updates. It's a completely different idea, forcing users to manually uninstall and reinstall if that's what you prefer. Most people today are really, most people today is 5 years old. Like a lot of things just update automatically. Not always for good, if anybody remembers the CrowdStrike uh, thing that happened almost a year ago, but it's extremely common today that applications update without user intervention. Questions?